Efficiency Unlocked is hosted by two tech-savvy physicians and dear friends of mine, Drs. Adam Carew and Dale Gold, who are experts in using technology to automate routine tasks and increase efficiency in everyday and business life. Let's see what they have for us today.
It was when I was reading a Steve Jobs book back in 2012, where he's like, ordinary people do the incredible things. Like, ordinary people are the ones that make the decision and actually go change the world. It's not.
That's our guest this week, Dr. Jared Pelo. He's an emergency medicine physician who has started a new venture in precision medicine and AI called Bionic Health.
And as I thought through the timing of building Bionic Health, it was really AI is going to unlock the efficiency needed to deliver this type of care at scale. And so that was the opportunity I saw is, okay, I don't have to be like a data synthesis machine. AI can do that. And then what I can do is I can deliver great care.
This is the type of stuff we love in NerdMDs. So Jared was an early pioneer and actually started a company called iScribes in 2014, which was one of the first ambient AI companies. He ultimately sold that company to Nuance Communication, and together with the Nuance team, developed Dragon Ambient Experience. We're going to talk about that and a ton about Bionic Health on this upcoming episode. We hope you enjoy this show. Welcome to this week's episode of NerdMD's Efficiency Unlocked. As you just heard, we have a cool guest this week, but Dale and I, actually, Dale, I wanted to ask you, what are your general thoughts around this kind of personalized, kind of more prescriptive, kind of individualized medicine that, we keep hearing about?
Hey, Adam. Yeah, I think that, you and I have talked a lot about this, and I think that it's always been this balance of we want to have this data and do amazing things with it. And it's just, how do we integrate that, into the workflows of providers, and how do we get patients to have access, to that data in a way that we're not overloaded by it. But, I have to think that the technology is moving at a pace that we have to be close to finding a way that we can give the exact evidence-based care to each patient.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I just think it's an evolving space, like with genomics and being able to know what our genomics map is. This concept of like whole body scanning, future state where maybe those will be much more preventative and accurate and minimizing false positives, et cetera. And yeah, I think just people want this. I think people want to be treated like an individual and not like a number that's part of a population. And that's not to downplay the amazing strides we've made in America with population health initiatives, but I think we have to move from population to precision. So that's my totally take.
Agree.
Yeah. Well, we actually have someone on the show today that I think crosses over with a lot of the stuff that Dale and I like, as well as this, evolution of personalized medicine. And you obviously heard an intro to Jared on the intro here, and he's on to his new venture. But we're super happy to have Jared Pelo with us today. So welcome to the show, Jared.
Welcome.
Adam, Dale, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. And, I think we should mention Jared was nice enough to have me on his show that he has as well. So this is one of those great examples of reciprocal sharing and having guests on.
That's right.
As well. So Jared, I want to jump right into, some of these like sound bites that we, just used for you, but I think we really like to understand the person. And I think you have a fascinating physician background and entrepreneurial background. So, kind of going back, like what kind of got you into the entrepreneurial spirit of wanting to create things and make things better for medicine? And, share a little bit about that story for us and the listeners.
Yeah. I don't know if you paid attention to like this whole debate about like, is there free will or is there not free will? Like there's all this debate about that nowadays, and people like Sam Harris talking about it. But like, I can think of all these little things that happened that pushed me towards it. And so there's this part of me that was like, it was always bound to happen. But some of the things as I look back retrospectively and say, okay, like what what pushed me that way. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My brother was like 16 in the New York Times, starting his first company. He's 14 years older than me. Next thing, like, I did like door-to-door sales in college. I was kind of a hustler. I'd go camp out at the Patagonia store in Salt Lake City during med school. Nice. And I'd like be the jerk that would go in and like grab all the cheap stuff and then go sell it on eBay. Right. Everybody's giving me dirty looks, but I'm like, I gotta hustle. We gotta make this work. And then I had this funny conversation with a partner of mine once I started practicing in the ER, and I was complaining like, I hate this, and he's like, I hate it too. And I'm like, you've been doing it forever, and you seem happy. And he told me, people that are the happiest are those that are trying to make medicine better. And so the next thing I did was I started as a medical director of this little emergency department that was like an hour away. It was one of our satellite hospitals. And I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to just transform this ER. I'm going to make it like the ER of the future. And like Chromecast had just come out. So I made all these videos about like education, like, hey, you've got a kidney stone. Let me tell you about it. And I was going to make it so my doctors didn't like have to like explain everything to their patients. And the hospital was like, no, you can't do that. Like, you can't just put Chromecast in our hospital and then start showing videos to patients. And that was kind of one of those moments where I was like, oh, it's going to be really hard to innovate inside the hospital walls. So I think I might have to step outside the hospital walls and innovate and come in kind of from the outside. So those were several of the things that kind of led to that moment where I was like, I think I'm going to go try something.
Yeah, that's. I think Dale and I relate to that a lot. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
It sounds a lot like Adam right now.
Yeah, definitely the transition point. I think for me, I was contemplating all of those things and probably realized those a long time ago, but maybe just not as soon as you did, which is sweet. So we obviously know your new venture is Bionic Health. But like, Can you tell us a little bit about like what was the first like thing that you did? And you were kind of one of the pioneers in the intelligent scribe, market. Yeah. So can you share a little bit about that past?
Yeah. So it's funny. I'm working at this emergency department that's like an hour away from the mothership, and we had scribes at Lynchburg General where I was working, middle of Virginia. And one cool thing was I went to UVA for my residency, and they had scribes in like 2008, and they were giving them to residents. So that was kind of the funny thing is like, I actually chose that residency because they said they'd give me a scribe. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And it was on paper when I started. So we had scribes running around like jotting stuff on paper for us. And so when I started working at this satellite hospital, I was so used to scribes. I was like, I need my scribes. Like, I'm way less efficient without a scribe. And so I go look on the internet. I was like, is there anybody doing virtual scribing? And at the time, there was this group down in Mexico, out of Guadalajara, where you could hire one of the doctors down there to be your scribe in the US. And so I was like, oh, I guess somebody's doing it. Never mind. And then like a year later, when Google Glass became public, like it had only been there for developers. And when it became public, I was like, oh, I could wear these things and somebody back in Lynchburg can scribe for me. And so that was kind of the big idea. And that's where I started working on it. We made all sorts of decisions along the way. Of course, Augmetics started right before us. So Augmetics, similar virtual scribing, they started with Google Glass. They stuck with it. They were hardcore, like, we're going to stick with Google Glass. We tried Google Glass for 3 months and we're like, oh, well, this POS isn't going to do the job. So like, we're going to pivot hard. So we switched to audio recording only. And because at the time, I felt like, the scribe, I thought they needed video. And so I even tried, we like hacked a webcam together. So like the doctor would wear like a webcam as like a lapel pin and walk into the room. We tried all sorts of stuff. And we ended up on just an iPhone app. And we did that for 3 years. We only did ortho. because we decided we're just going to get really good at one thing. And we were great at it. And so we're kind of scooped up by Nuance Communications in 2017. And, I didn't know, we always planned. Like my pitch back in 2014, there's a video of me saying, someday we will automate scribing. And I had no idea if the AI would actually get there. We were working with a company out of Boston. They had made Alexa. So like their founder, Jeff Thomas, he had made Alexa and then sold it to Amazon. And so we were working with him to automate for us and to start build it out. And then Nuance grabbed us. And that was super cool because I got to see, we went from idea and now that product that we developed it into, Dragon Ambient Experience, serves thousands and thousands of doctors every day and is one of the cool ones out there. So that was a great experience.
Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, I have lots of questions about that. I think it's super fascinating, both to be solving those problems that you had right in front of you, as a clinician and what you needed, but I'm just curious too, in that, that hustler, entrepreneurial spirit you had, what were were there any other ideas that you had, some of the less good ideas? Because clearly like thinking about creating, DAX before DAX is obviously, a really impressive thing. I think it's going to lead to our conversation about how you're seeing the future and what you're doing next. But, just anything else that you were thinking about back then, thinking about all of our other physicians listening that have their ideas, how did you fine tune on the good one?
It's funny because, I definitely had other ideas and I've seen other businesses try to do those ideas, some more successfully and less successfully. I mean, just like the education piece was an idea. Can you make an education platform that makes it easy for doctors to hand education to a patient and not have to sit there and educate them the whole time? Patient engagement stuff, hospital front door, digital front door years ago. But the interesting thing is the ideas are important, but like when I started iScribes and then it became DAX, like I never talked to a doctor who didn't say, oh, I had this idea a decade ago. Like I thought of this. I always thought computers should write for us. Yeah. And so there are good ideas, but I think most of us have good ideas. It's like who actually takes the step to do it. And it was when I was reading a Steve Jobs book back in 2012, where he's like, ordinary people do the incredible things. Like ordinary people are the ones that make the decision and actually go change the world. It's not like there are superhumans among us that go change the world, except for Elon. But the rest of us are just normal people that just change the world.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point and good advice. Taking us forward to talk about what you're working on now, what are those experiences that you had both clinically, and working with your own startup that, took you to think about solving this problem?
Yeah. So I'll explain a little bit about the problem that we're trying to solve, and how I ended up here. So being in the ER, like you're always late to take care of somebody, and not literally, like you're there just in time, but like they already have diabetes. They're already having a heart attack. They already have cancer. You're just diagnosing them. And it's part of what I think is American healthcare. I just started seeing like, this isn't the way I would design things. If I were to design things, I wouldn't want to wait until the disease is there. I wouldn't wait until my brakes went out on my car. I wouldn't wait till, my piston seized up. Like I want to maintain, I want to like try to make this body, make people's bodies as healthy as possible for as long as possible. So that's kind of number one. Number two, that's not necessarily a new idea either. It's just extremely expensive to do because it takes so much time from a doctor. And so there's doctors like Peter Attia, where, I mean, he doesn't just take a lot of time. He's very popular, so he's very expensive. So you could pay, over $100,000 to be his patient. Or there are others like Fountain Life from like Peter Diamandis, Tony Robbins, and these other companies that are going to be $20,000 to $30,000 a year. And as I thought through the timing of building Bionic Health, it was really AI is going to unlock the efficiency needed to deliver this type of care at scale. And so that was the opportunity I saw is, okay, I don't have to be like a data synthesis machine. AI can do that. And then what I can do is I can deliver great care.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's the next problem to solve. Can you tell us a little bit more about, I guess how you're approaching that? How, what is Bionic Health doing about it? But you have my attention on the why and the possibility of technology.
Yeah. So it comes down to two, three basic problems. So problem number one is, can you get somebody's data all together in the right place? And we have tailwinds for that with like the TEFCA, health information exchanges. So data in healthcare has never moved easier than it does today. It's not easy, but it's never moved easier. And so that's kind of problem number one. Can you put all the data together in the right place? And then problem number two, I would say, is not a solved problem, but I believe it will be solved. And that is, will AI systems become sufficiently intelligent and trustworthy that we will allow them to synthesize and act on our behalf as physicians? And there are some use cases that we use today, like ambient, right? But there are other use cases that we don't use today, and even cases that companies are scared to use because they're worried that it's going to be deemed a medical device. And so that's what has to happen next is first you aggregate the data. Second, you build the AI in to synthesize the data. So what we've done at Bionic is try to tackle both those things simultaneously. Obviously, as one is easier than the other. So collecting the data isn't too difficult. It takes, hooking into a health information exchange. And then when the ability for consumers to ask for their own health records is available, which it kind of is, but kind of isn't yet. But once that's more broadly available, then we'll build that in as well. Another piece of this is like, I want to build tools that work for kind of all the different people in the system. So if a patient wants to ask ChatGPT a problem about their health today, they have to go into a non-HIPAA compliant platform, input their health information data, which is all legal, like it's their data, they can do it. But then they ask ChatGPT, and Zach Cohane, he's the head of biomedical informatics at Harvard and wrote the book with Peter Lee about their first kind of hitting GPT-4 and realizing it was going to change medicine. And he said, I asked him, what would you tell a patient today? And he said, I would tell every patient, get a second opinion from ChatGPT. Like, it's good enough that you should get a second opinion. It's much better than Google. So that's one thing that we'll make available to people is we're going to build a platform where they can ask for their own medical records, and we'll have the most powerful AI models available for them. And they can ask for a second opinion in a HIPAA compliant, safe way. So that's kind of one tooling that we're working on. The second tooling is, okay, now I've asked questions. Now I want medical care, and I want the right kind of medical care. And so for that, we're setting up a nationwide clinic, which is painful. But we're currently in 20 states. We cover about 80% of the US population with our clinic. And we're continuing to build out the technology needed to scale the physicians inside that clinic. And so by that, we built our own EHR just because I wasn't willing to have the data locked away from me. If I was going to automate as much of the physician's job as possible, I wanted complete access to that data and be able to move things around and make things happen. And so, yeah, that's kind of the basic framework.
No, that's awesome. That's fascinating. I'm going to hand it over to Adam.
Yeah. No, I mean, you mentioned the comment from Zach when he was on your show, which is a great episode to listen to if anyone's interested. And he's actually going to be on our podcast soon too. So it'll probably come out after this one. So if you look ahead, you'll see that too. But I'm looking forward to that conversation with him because I agree. I mean, it's like not a matter of time Well, it's not a matter of the technology getting there. It's just a matter of how quickly it's going to get there for us, right? I mean, so
Right.
the way you're framing things up is I think spot on, and it's the way, honestly, everyone in healthcare should be thinking, because this is going to happen whether we like it or not, and it's just a matter of if you're the one that's going to be using it or not using it. I think patients will ultimately choose what you just described. You know, that's going to be the solution for a lot of this. So, I mean, a lot of people refer to, you know, the concept of medicine 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And I think a lot of people get confused between 2.0 and 3.0. Like they think, well, what happened? What was 1.0 and 2.0? I mean, we don't need to go into the details of that, because I think what you're envisioning really is the medicine 3.0 aspect. But like, can you talk about like that approach and, you know, why you think that's going to really stand out, you know, in the healthcare system itself?
Yeah. I'll define 2.0 real quick for us. So I'd say most of us practice medicine 2.0 today, which is actually really great medicine compared to historical medicine. You know, we have tools like antibiotics and vaccines and things that save millions, hundreds of millions of lives per day or per year. And so that is a great place to be. And we even have randomized control trials that tell us how to do evidence-based medicine at scale. And we have major guidelines that come out that tell us how to do it at a population scale. And so all really good things. And so I don't think of medicine 3.0 as being better than 2.0. I just think of it as evolution and progression. And so it's just where we need to go next. And what it is it's personalized, it's predictive, it's powered by data, and then it is primarily preventative. And the way that I kind of think about it is, and I personally hate the term longevity medicine. Like I much prefer just health and medicine.
Yeah.
And so I would say what I think health looks like is, number one, don't die. And so you look at the things that are going to cause death and you prevent them. And so you look at, and the American Heart Association just this year at their big conference came out with their 30-year risk model. That's absolutely medicine 3.0 kind of thinking, because now they're not thinking on a 10-year risk horizon, they're thinking on a 30-year risk horizon. So then you can optimize somebody's risk for 30 years instead of 10. And so it's those kinds of things. So optimize risk, don't die from preventable diseases like a heart attack, a stroke, cancer, dementia, whatever those things are. Figure out how to decrease the risk as much as possible. You're not going to get to zero. We're all going to die. But then the second piece to me is actually the harder piece to implement on like a national scale. And this is because it has to do with humans. And the second piece is health through not eating too much and moving your body. And, you know, having as much muscle that's as strong as possible for as long as possible and being as mobile as possible for as long as possible. If you bring together those two things, like prevent disease and make yourself mobile and strong, that's an awesome life.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because when we talk about these concepts, they're actually pretty simple, right? It's like the stuff that has always been said: eat well, move around, like AKA exercise. Doesn't mean you have to do jazzercise or a crazy like Peloton like workout. It just means you have to move. And yeah, and if you do those things, like when you get older, you're going to be able to get on and off the toilet easier. You're going to be able to put your clothes on easier. And it's like, that's the decline I've seen, you know, in folks in my family. I mean, I actually have a grandmother who she's going to turn 99 in January. And she is still pretty good. She doesn't have her eyesight, but her ears are great. And functionally, she's pretty solid. And honestly, her skin still looks like she's like in her 70s, like, or even younger.
She looks younger than me.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, she doesn't need the AI filter for her skin.
She doesn't need the AI filter.
But it's just like, you know, I think of the stuff that, you know, what could happen to her, you know, like in a second. I mean, like, yeah, she's obviously frail. Like, I mean, if she fell over, she would probably break something or definitely injure something. And yeah, what you're describing is how do you make that kind of, I mean, some people refer to it as health span, but like, just how do you make yourself healthier for longer So then the very last portion of your life, hopefully is like very short in like that decline, and not this like steady, decline
Exactly.
where you can't go on vacations, you can't go see your grandkids. Like, I think that's, along those lines, though, what do you think are obviously if that comes to fruition, it's going to dramatically change the healthcare system, both like the system it is now, the brick and mortar that we have. I've talked about like the demise of a hospital, and people think I'm crazy when I say that, but I would argue what you're painting, we will have a less need for a hospital like we do now. We hopefully will have a less need for emergency medicine. Obviously injuries and those things will still happen, but yeah, what's your take on that?
Well, and you guys know this too, just hospital from home, like people like that way better.
Totally.
And we're going to get better at administering that stuff. But yeah, I think that is the future. I don't know that we have the right incentives in the US to make it happen in any time soon. And it really would take changing the playing field, like moving the touchdown, because today the touchdown is, you turn 65, you start your annual wellness visits, there's reimbursement for that, and I'm going to start finding disease in you. And we really need to move the end zone to like, you're 30 years old and I'm going to keep you super healthy. And when you're 40, there hasn't been much decline. And when you're 50, there still hasn't been much decline. Like, it has to start earlier. We have to kind of reframe health from where we are today. And I think what we've done today is we just kind of assume everybody is going to deteriorate at a certain rate. And we've just kind of assumed like this is just going to happen. And some people have good genetics, some people have bad genetics. And hopefully you have good genetics and you don't have a heart attack when you're 35.
Yeah, following up on that, thinking about, as I think about this abstract concept of, rethinking the way we do healthcare in this 3.0, how does this fit with traditional healthcare? What clear gaps is your platform addressing, and is there any synergy for both to exist? How do you see it playing together? How should customers be thinking about it?
Yeah, as it exists today, I think you definitely need both. And I'll often talk about how U.S. healthcare, like U.S. acute care, is the best in the world. Like, everybody from around the world, if they get sick, they come here, right? Like, if some wealthy person gets sick, they come here for cancer treatment, they come here for surgery. Like, if you're going to get shot in the U.S., you want to get shot in the U.S. Like, we know how to take care of traumas. We're really great. Our emergency department, STEMI time, stroke time, like pull out a clot. Like, we're awesome at acute care. We're just not great at preventative care yet. And so that's part of it is I think, of course, we still need acute care and we need all of that. The second piece is it really depends on when somebody starts kind of a preventative care program. If they start young enough, then they may not ever need kind of what we think of as traditional medicine. If they start old enough, we're going to find stuff that needs to be taken care of. So I'll just give you a few examples. So lipoprotein (a), 6 times as atherogenic as LDL, 20% of the population has it. American Heart Association says everybody should be screened if there's a family history. 1% of the population gets screened. And that's mostly just because our primary care force isn't updated on everything. They can't stay up to date on everything. It's hard. And if you had an AI system that was helping you and saying like, order this thing, that'd be great. Or I'm sure health systems like KP, you guys do a great job at saying like, these are the things you need to order. But so if we find somebody and they're 55 and they've got an LP(a) that's sky high, and so we say, hey, you really better get a calcium scan, and that's really bad, and then they have to see a specialized cardiologist and start working through that pathway. Or somebody who in a lot of this would possibly be caught by primary care, but like it's hard for people to get into primary care. So like we'll have members who they've been smokers, and so we put them on their cancer screening once a year, low dose CT scan of their chest, and and you find cancers, early stage cancers, and you find aneurysms that need to be looked at. And so you need health. You need like the general healthcare system to plug them back in. You need the vascular surgeon to watch things. You need the oncologist to take care of things. And so where we're at today, you definitely need both systems. And I still think of like what we do is it's a nice to have. Like what we do is we provide a cash pay kind of service. It's way cheaper than the other ones out there, but it still is like not everybody can afford it, which kind of hurts me to my soul because I went into emergency medicine because I never wanted to ask, do you have insurance? But if you're going to build these systems, sometimes you have to do it on the backs of people who can pay to start so that you can make them generally available later. So yeah, I think both systems need to exist.
And how would, myself as a primary care doctor, how would I interact with the system? It sounds like when people need things, there might be referrals or directions on who to see. Would I expect patients walking into my office with a PDF, or how do you integrate that way?
Yeah, that's right. So today it's a PDF and a referral letter from one of our providers to a primary care provider, letting them know what we've done, what we've found, what our general recommendations are. Sometimes it's directly into a specialist if it's more acute, if we feel like they need to acutely be seen. And that also is part of what takes time for us as we grow this practice is like we have to get to know the different states, the different towns. You guys know healthcare is local. Like it isn't a national thing. So yeah, that's how it works.
No, that's cool. We like to talk about the data next, and you kind of jumped into some, and I think that people really love, to hear that. Do you have any data that you like to show, or case studies, or even just successful stories that can help people connect to this work?
Yeah. I mean, we've only been doing it for 18 months. So like partly it's like how much time can you track longitudinally to see the changes you want?
Right.
But a few of the things we've seen, 30-year risk for patients, it usually goes down by 10 or 15% after just like our first time talking through, okay, we need to fix your hemoglobin A1C or your LDL. The ones that are probably more important to the patient are the outcomes they see and feel. And because we use a lot of behavior change, so we have health coaches and people work directly with health coaches. And so like tremendous weight loss, muscle gain, like they look better, feel better, fit in their clothes better, sleep better, all of those things. That's really probably what the patients, like the members, they would say. And it's funny, my co-founder, he was meeting with one of his friends the other day who's a member, and he came back and he's like, he looks like amazing. Like he's always a big guy, but now he looks jacked and ripped and like he looks amazing. And he's like, one cool thing is all my friends look amazing now. And like our goal isn't to make the world beautiful, but it is nice to see people looking healthier. And so I would say those are our outcomes early on in the first year and a half. The other is that people want it. So in a year and a half, we've only had like 4 people, and they pay a monthly fee, and we've only had like 4 people quit, and out of nearly 300. So that's the other thing is like it's something people want and they enjoy and they like. And because I'm always thinking scale, like if we had something that was much more automated that we could deliver for even less expensively, would people want it? Would people use it? And I'm not saying everybody in the US would, but there's a population that wants to get healthier. They want guidance. They know it's simple, but it's hard. It's simple, like eat healthy, move your body, but it's hard, and they need that help. And so, yeah, those are some of the findings we've had.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that, having access to preventive care is something that more people would want. The more technology allow you to scale it. It's just, there's only so much primary care appointments, and, having that be the bottleneck for the whole system to get everything in, is not always the best use of that preventive time. So I think it's a good problem to solve. Let me pass it over to you, Adam.
Yeah. I mean, I've obviously been listening intently, and it's just, there's a lot of things that, you mentioned that I think opened my mind, but I think it is. I mean, I guess I'll double click on the comment you just made. You said that there's likely a hedge that a lot of people want this, and I think you're right. I mean, I think it's, people know it's not good to go eat at McDonald's every day, right? No offense, McDonald's. Sorry, they're gonna hate Nerd MDs now because I just bashed them. But I think they know that, and like people know that you shouldn't be eating a ton of processed foods. Like it's infinitely better to eat something that's grown in the ground and maybe even grown in your own backyard. But it's like, you're right. It's like very hard to go from, what we know is right to like, how do you actually do it? And I think people do need that help. So I don't know, long-winded way of saying, I think you're totally on the right track with this. And, I think what I'd want to spin for, the last time we had with you before we get to the fun round, the Nerd Alert round, is, you alluded to this obviously in the beginning, but like dig in a little bit more on like why you really believe this like personalized medicine is the future, and those impacts that we really will see long term. Because I think ultimately, really, what all that matters is like the outcomes of all this, right? Like we want that to be positive. And if you do a bunch of stuff here that doesn't end up as a positive outcome, then did it really make the impact that you wanted? So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, honestly, that's a great point. The idea that you can spend a ton of money on testing and not impact health is 100% true. Like you could, and you guys both know this, like we see it in the hospital, like especially with like a young resident, and they're like, I want to test every test in our lab book. And you're like, no, like that's not helpful. You need to know what you're testing for, what the precision is, and accuracy, specificity. But what I think there's signal of this coming. And actually Colorado has an interesting use case. I dug deep on genomics for a while, and genomics is fascinating. It's if you haven't dug deep on it, then once you do, you'll be slightly disappointed. Because I expected to find a lot better science around genomics and a lot more useful things to use in genomics. But things that are useful, pharmacogenomics, are really useful. And I don't know if you guys have this as well, but the University of Colorado has built that into their Epic. And so if you order a medication, it'll adjust the dosing of that medication based on pharmacogenomics if they're part of the biobank for Colorado. And so that's super cool. And so that's just one little use case, but extremely hard to implement and extremely hard to do. But the difference is that we're at this moment where we can collect more of this data. You can run your genome. If you're going to run your genome today, the one that I would recommend is a company called Nucleus out of New York. It's about $400. They use the latest DNA sequencing technology. Them and I, we don't agree on their report necessarily. I've gone back and forth with them. They're the ones we use. They report interesting things like, what is your predicted IQ from your genome, which I'm only average, guys.
That sounds a little hoo-ha right there.
Yeah. But they get all your genes. And so now you have that data for the rest of your life. And we're only going to learn more about it. And like, it's kind of like, I think of it as like micro data and macro data. And you look at like heart rate. That's like micro data, and micro data becomes more and more useful the sicker you are. So, I mean, the sickest person, you're not just checking their blood pressure twice a day, right? You've got an art line in them, and you're checking continuous blood pressure in the ICU. And so that is like the ultimate use case of microdata. And people think that they're going to find like discoveries from like steps or heart rate or breath. And that's really, to me, that stuff's like helpful if you're sick. Like that's microdata. But it's the trends, it's the macro data as you zoom out and you say, okay, well, what is your average step count per day, per week, per month? Mm-hmm. What is your average resting heart rate? Is it going up or down? What is like, that's where the data gets super interesting. And I think we're getting to this point where it's easier and easier to collect data. Continuous glucose monitors are just the beginning of kind of more invasive tracking technology. There was one, I'll have to find the website and send it to you guys, but there's one, they're supposed to be out next year. It's going to be tracking continuous lactate, continuous glucose, a bunch of other things, and that will just get better and smaller. And so the whole idea behind personalized precision medicine, like, it's coming, but we have to solve for those two kind of main things. Is you need to aggregate the data in one place, because even if you have 5 wearables today, they maybe aggregate onto Apple Health, maybe not, because not all the wearables will share their data with Apple Health. So you need to aggregate all the data across all your health signal. And then you need AI that's smart enough and capable enough and trustworthy enough that we can let it give us recommendations and even maybe do things for us on our behalf. So I think it's a really exciting time to be alive. In healthcare, I think there's never been a more exciting time, which is the way it should be. Like, hopefully it's always progressing and it's always the most exciting time. But there are giant leaps, and I think we're at this moment where it's a giant leap forward.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think you said it best. I think you see this space from a technological and a clinical space. So to hear your view of it, I think is inspiring to know that this stuff is coming. What do you think, Adam? Nerd Alert lightning round?
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, otherwise we could talk to Jared for another hour, and I'd miss the next person I'm supposed to talk to in the next hour. They probably wouldn't be happy. But yeah, you ready to hit it up for this Nerd Alert round?
Let's do it.
Cool. All right, we'll ping pong these for you. What's your favorite medical gadget or piece of tech that you can't live without personally?
Ooh, it is, well, it's a health gadget, not medical probably, but it's my 8 Sleep. It's, I've had one for 3 years and it helps me sleep so much better. I used to just be like this chronic sweater, and I would always be like, do I have, endocarditis or something? Because I'm having night sweats and it was just that I was hot. And so 8 Sleep has revolutionized that for me.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, Dale and I both have it. I convinced Dale and his wife to get one after we did for about a year. And I agree. I wish I could take it with me when I travel, but it's definitely not portable.
Right. No.
Yeah, you're amongst friends here. And 8 Sleep, we're trying to get you on the podcast.
Yeah, right. We're working that hard. So if you have any connections, Jared, there, let me know too. Off the mic.
The three consumers. Next up, this is the dinner question. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, and this one says in medicine, who would it be and why? And I'm okay with historical figure in medicine, or take it whichever way you like.
Yeah. Historical figure in medicine. There's so many great medical minds through history, but I might actually go more for computers, because I think that tech is just so interesting. And because I feel like we just passed the Turing test, I think it'd be Alan Turing. I would love to sit there and talk to him about all the what he thinks artificial intelligence would look like, feel like, what should the world change to be when it happens? That's who I'd pick.
Yeah, super cool. And it's so true. You can't separate medicine and technology anymore. They've really become one.
They are. People still want to separate it, but those are the folks that are going to get left behind. So do you have an interesting book or YouTube video or podcast or something that you kind of came across recently that you would be willing to share?
I just read This Is Marketing by Seth Godin, which if you don't know Seth Godin, he's great anyways. And he's got a bunch of YouTube videos. But This Is Marketing is kind of like a conglomeration of all his previous works, and he kind of summarizes a bunch of stuff. And, he does such a nice job of saying, it's not selling, it's serving. You really figure out how to serve other people, and then you're just telling your story and providing value. And actually, I think it's a lot of what you guys do. You're not busy selling anything. You're just trying to provide value to the ecosystem. And so, that was a great book.
No, it's cool. I follow him on social. He's amazing. I probably should read the book too.
How about in a parallel universe, if you weren't a doctor creator, what career would you be pursuing?
Oof. I mean, I probably would have had way different genetics, but I'd be like playing in the NFL or something. like I would have to have different. I mean, I would have to have different genetics. But yeah, I'm a big sports fan, and growing up, I always told people I'm going to play in the NFL someday, but like I only played football till 9th grade. But then I just figured I was going to pack on some pounds and become an offensive lineman, but that didn't happen either. So yeah, my dreams are over.
Well, I'm sure you can intertwine some of your precision once it's figured out to some of the athletes as well. They don't hate improving their performance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, last Nerd Alert round. Question for you. Is there an app on your phone that you'd be embarrassed to admit that you use? It's a little spin on the normal question that we ask about, is there an app you love? But is there one that you actually do kind of use? But and then if you have a best one, you can obviously share that too. I'm
so boring. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of one that is embarrassing, or like I'm just so boring when it comes to like that kind of stuff.
How about not embarrassing, but something you want to cut back on the use of and stop clicking?
Oh yeah, that's a good way to. That's a good angle.
I quit socials like a year and a half ago. Besides LinkedIn, man, I'm gonna have to pass on that one, guys.
That's all right.
I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of Audible, but nothing else very interesting.
You're like the second person
that you already quit social is more interesting, because that's probably a lot of people's answer. Well, how did you come about doing that?
Honestly, just tried it a couple times and was like, oh, life is so much better. And every once in a while, I'll say over the last 18 months, I've probably been on social for like 2 weeks total. And it'll usually be like, I'll download it for a day. Somebody will send me something and they'll be like, check this out on Instagram. And so I'll download it. And then, 2 hours later, I'm like, I'm still here. Like, what happened?
and so, the doom scroll.
And I deleted it again. Yeah.
No, you're the second physician, entrepreneur, leader that I talked to recently that did that and gave it up. And I think it's interesting, because I think you need to use some of those tools like to for your own voice and to help, spread. Yeah. But yeah, there's like so much extra fluff in there that you just get sucked into. So kudos to you. I know my wife, she deletes everything on her phone for a while. And then I'll look over there and I'll see it bad. I'll be like, you're on Instagram. She's like, no, I'm in Safari on Instagram. I'm just getting caught up. But so that's always give her a hard time for that. But I guess we always like the guests to give any final comment or something that they felt like, oh, I wish I would have said, or anything like that. Do you have any final kind of comment that you'd like to wrap up the show with today?
Yeah, I'll just say especially for clinicians that are listening, especially practicing clinicians, I just want them to know how important it is for them to be involved and to be willing to do things like you guys do. When I first started working in tech, the only clinicians I would see were usually people who graduated from Ivy League, worked at McKinsey, and then worked in tech. I wasn't seeing practicing clinicians, people who had seen tens of thousands of patients. I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, I probably saw 20 to 30,000 patients in the ER when I was in the ER. And that's important. It's important to truly, deeply understand the problems of healthcare so that we can solve them. And so that's the thing I would say. If you're a clinician, if you're listening to this, if you're like, do I jump in? Do I try to change healthcare? Absolutely, we need to.
That's a great message.
Yeah, love that, Jared. Well, thank you for taking an hour out of your day to chat with us. And we look forward to hearing more about Bionic Health and the growth, and we'll obviously be in touch with you.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming.
Take care. Thank you for listening to Efficiency Unlocked, Nerd Tested, MD Approved, a Nerd MD's podcast by Drs. Adam Carew and Dale Gold.